doing a video on Lorcana deck lists game versus Domingo, which is kind of awesome. Wait, I'll just make it so you can see the whole screen, and I'm going to do this whilst recording the video because I'm just that good at editing. The only content we have of this is, of course, from Lorcana Villains channel, so you do have their pictures on the screen at the same time. But if you just go with it, I guess, and we can watch through and see the actual good gameplay. But I think it's pretty good, and it's a matchup sort of I hadn't really had to think about too much because I just don't know how relevant RP is going to be. I mean, even Domingo's deck is referred to as RP back question mark, which lets you know how relevant it is in the meta. So really, right now, it's not one I'm been testing into. Um, so it's interesting to see how it turns out. I haven't actually watched these games or seen sort of what the outcome is. I've only skimmed through some of them just to see how it plays. But I know he took the list that I'd posted not too long ago, or the current one on my Dreamboard, and then he did these like changes that he thought were good, and I quite like some of them. I think Sticky Mickey's never going to be bad, and I think Chi and Po is pretty good in some instances as well. So overall, I think it's some really good changes. And looking at his hand sort of to begin with, it's pretty damn good to start the game off with. So I think we're going to skip ahead a little bit just to get it so it starts going. But that's after the mulligan, so that's not bad. And yeah, you can just ink one of the Hirams if you've got it as well. And there's no way in hell they don't pop that bell turn one. So they actually have a pretty decent curve. I think one Pluto in hand would make that hand just a little bit better. And then looking at the RP player's hand, they have got like double one drop or one drop and Kuz go into Crab, which is kind of rough, and you kind of need to bait it and get them out of their hand for that. But overall, I always thought this matchup was one of our better ones. At least in set six, you kind of resource drain them like crazy. The bounce sort of stuff is such a hard thing for them to do to get their cards back in their hand, or it's such an awkward thing to do, whilst also at the same time trying to make sure that they can't lose basically. Um, so yeah, starting Bell turn one is probably the best thing you can do. I am probably going to keep skipping through parts of this video because it's just I think it's going to take a little while because they do a lot of thinking in these videos. And yeah, it looks like Demi decided to ink the Cusco turn one and not play anything, which is probably just really fearing Bell singing Let the Storm Rage on, which completely makes sense in a lot of players and decks that spam one drops. This is the best thing for them to do. Because on turn two you'll have both one drops land and actually stick because there's no real. I think it's like let the Storm Rage on sing, hardcast let the Storm Rage on is the only real way to answer it. So that's pretty good. And then of course you have that crab, which would just do some really good value there. So this is always an awkward spot to be in. I think you still kind of have to bait the crab out. You could maybe just quest with the Smee, just so you have the singer. So if you had strength from the snapback, you could sing strength from playing something, but then you'd also need the three characters as well. So it's a fairly awkward spot to be in. And to be honest with you, I think Kiwi Birds is really valuing right now that there isn't that many crabs in the meta, and sort of taking quite good advantage of that. Purple Steel is really the only relevant deck right now. Um, but yeah, I think you can still just turn it all sideways as well. I don't think that's a bad thing. You kind of know what's going to happen, and there's no way for you to really stall it out and play a slow game. You won't really be able to win that way. But yeah, they take that play. And here is kind of where it'd be really nice for them to have a Pluto, because then what you can do here is ward up the Pluto, and the only real response there is like bounce the crab and run the fox in, which would answer it. But then, of course, that's still a fairly slow play. They'd be down to just the Diablo on board. They would have the Diablo to buff and then challenge something, but then you couldn't really kill an Alice with it. You could kill the Smee, and overall, you're kind of just leading on the lore race there. So I don't think that's the worst spot to be in. And yeah, just taking the lore again, because you do get up to 9 from that, and you know they have an answer for it, but the answer is fairly awkward as well. Like, what do you do here? Do you run the crab in, buff the Diablo, and it's still. If that was a broom right now, they'd be in a such better spot. But they're not. And again, I'm going to have to skip through some of these points because I realized this video was about 2 hours long. And I think inking the brawls are pretty decent against Kiwi Birds because the things we want to play tend to have ward that are brawl targets, like Cogsworth and Alice, and then maybe get a Boral and Hiram. But of course, we don't focus too much in on doing that. Um, so yeah, that's quite an interesting play. I hadn't really thought about that. Just putting some damage on the Alice for the next turn. But you could be hard punished by like a Baymax there. You could even be like sort of semi-punished by a Cogsworth there as well. But the hand is looking a little bit interesting. I think you really would have wanted the Pluto down at some point, but I think at this point you just really can take the Law, and you've got that Pete there for later on, or play the Pete now. That makes sense. Just go wide. So you can like kind of make it a bit more awkward for them to answer things. So if you do go up to 16 Law, um, as well. But yeah, now it's going to be a little bit easier. If you had to sort of let the storm as well, there's so many ways I think this could have gone even better. And even saying there's so many ways this could have gone better, they've got to 16 Law, and they know the opponent has no way to reduce that Law, so it's going to be answer everything every turn. So that's still not a bad spot to be in. I think, yeah, if you had the Pluto, if you had the Storms, if you had the Strength, like if you could have Strength this Crab, you could have really just shut them out of the game completely. They do have a second Crab, which is kind of awful. But yeah, there was tons of cards, and then if you draw a Porp Skull off the top, I think it's an amazing spot as well. You're going up to 18 Law, and pretty much now, oh, they're going up to 17. That's also not bad. Uh, yeah, I think if you could play the Alice down, so maybe if yeah, actually, if you don't quest with the Pete there, I think this is something El did say he made a couple mistakes in the first game and I didn't actually know what they were because I haven't seen the videos yet. But he was at 16 Law. If you didn't quest with the Pete there, you know they're going to Tremaine. So you could have kept it upright, just played an Alice, and they can't actually answer that without you getting 4 Law next turn. So that would have been game there and then. But instead, yeah, it's going to go on for a little bit longer, I think. And with the second Tremaine, it's going to be even harder, and you know it's B prep range as well. So yeah, it does get a bit tougher. They get to 19 Law, and yeah, that one small minor decision there does make the game go on for quite a bit longer there. And they have 2 B preps in hand. Now we're getting into the songs, which is always rough when you've got that turn of not having the songs into the songs. Um, yeah, I'm not really sure. You have to kind of now work your way through all the removal. Hopefully, get the Be Prepared off just to keep the game going for a bit longer. Going up to 17 Law as well is rough against Ruby Amethyst because you know they can goat bounce and things like that later on in the game. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting turn. You could do a couple different things. You could keep looking for another item. You kind of want to put one thing on board though every turn. You do want to be like, hey, you have to answer this. And if we got a mana at this point, I think it's just game. So that's quite interesting as well. Yeah, this forces the next Be Prepared. Which is pretty nice for you because now you're at a point, as I say, where the resources are staggeringly low. I think they actually only own 2 Tremaines in the deck, so you could have used that knowledge there, and you could have just played the Chi and Po out actually. And the worst thing that's going to happen is going to get Be Prepared again. So yeah, there's been some interesting turns here. You've got double mana now, so if they weren't able to play 2 characters on board and answer your Hiram, that would have been a different game there. But um, yeah, there's some very interesting turns there. I think this was the game done. Yeah, you'd have to find an answer for both. But yeah, I think definitely down to the questing and kind of looking and thinking about their removal. And that was always the toughest thing with the matchup was like I'm not actually sure how many like Tremaines they might be running, or Medusas they might be running, or like Elsas that exert. I think Elsa seems to be gone from all the RP lists, but it was always knowing the actual counts because it's the same against Ruby Sapphire as well. You're kind of just counting down each removal card that they could possibly have. So if they're going to play a big Sisu, they're going to play a Be Prepared. You kind of want to know the average of how many there are in a deck. It looks like right now Big Sisu will have got an average of 4 in a deck and no Be Prepared. So you kind of they kind of made Pete redundant in that matchup, but we're not talking about that matchup here. I think with this matchup you have to assume they have 4 B prepared and from 2 to 3 Tremaines. Of course, this was open deck lists as well, so you could have used that information going into it. But yeah, they're very interesting, very close, and that's just for game one being extremely close as well. Getting that Lord the Storm Rage on, yeah, just meaning that that 1 drop again can't be played. I think, to be honest with you, if I was the Ruby Amethyst player, I would just play it because the actual combination of Bell turn 1 Let the Storm is fairly uncommon. It's a 3 card combo, and like you kind of only really mulligan for Bell and the item. You don't really mulligan for Let the Storm because you know how uncommon it is. But right now, this hand is like probably one of the like the best goated hands you could get for this deck, especially on the play. So you can kill anything they play. You can play a Smee, you can keep questing for lore, then you can put the Alice Pluto lock in. The only card that's interesting is that new Queen of Hearts card, but I think oh, that's quite an interesting turn to play the Anna instead. I guess it's a card, especially for Ruby Amethyst, where they don't really want to brawl it. That's going to be quite a strange turn. And here now, I guess because of the uh, Anna, it's kind of the same with the Pete as well. No, with the Smee. Sorry, if you played the Smee, they're going to crab buff, get the damage stuff on the um, what's it called? The Anna. So like it didn't really matter too much which one you played. It looks like it's kind of fairly hard to quest with either of them right now. So this new Queen of Hearts card is quite interesting. I don't know how often we're going to play into Ruby Amethyst. I don't know if it really is holding its weight in the meta, but I have seen this before on some sort of some Sims, you know which sim I'm talking about. um, yeah, it's kind of interesting because you know they can crab buff and then it becomes a problem afterwards. But to be fair, if that was a Smee and you quest with the Smee and then they crab buff run in, you can let the Storm Rage on Sing to take out the Queen of Heart and finish her off um, afterwards, and then you can set up the Pluto lock. So they would have a crab out, but then it will require them to play Fox Bounce, and then they're down to no cards on board, and you've still got two questers on there. So fairly interesting, but yeah, you just set up the lock here, um, and I think they took the law buff instead of warding up the Pluto, which is also fine because it's fairly awkward for them to have to answer this. Like if they run it in and play a crab, that's still fairly awkward. Um, this is interesting though. Now we're down to quite a few cards left, and they have got a crab up on board, so kind of interesting to see how they navigate this one. Um, but no, again, you just take the law. I think that's definitely right. Yeah, I'm interested to see why they picked the Anna over the Smee because they know there's a lot of crab buffs and everything in the deck, and the big Sisu as well would just chew that up. And yeah, I feel like the Smee might have been a better choice there, but it's still putting in tons of work. This Anna is, just questing and being very awkward. Like that crab can't actually take it out. Yeah, everything dies to Maui. But the only issue there is you could next turn play the what's it called? You could next turn let the Storm Rage on Sing, which is quite interesting because we kept that let the Storm Rage on from turn one, but we haven't actually seen it being used. Bearing in mind their deck has 12 one-drops in it as well. And yeah, that was the Smee that took the hit. I don't know if it survived this long, but I don't think it would have done. You could have got to a point there where um, you could let the Storm Rage on and take out the Maui because the 3 damage is so good. Um, Interested to see what they do here. They're setting up the library and moving things in there, but you are at a 9 lore lead and you've got quite a lot of lore on board as well. Knowing they both have 2B prepared on board. And it's kind of singing the strength of the Raging Fire on that crab is what I always really aim for in this matchup because it's such a good tool for them, like all purple decks. They make all their weaker characters now stronger, and some of those, like the little Diablo, you kind of want to get removed, or this Cusco that they're playing again in the 2-drop slot. You kind of don't mind if those things die anyway, so crab's always the most awkward thing. They can buff a Calhoun and purple steel, so it's always like the thing I want to sting something to the Raging Fire on as soon as they can. But I don't think they're out of this at all. I think they're still in a really good spot, and I've got an hour left of content, so I'm pretty sure they go to a longer turn here. Looks like they take out the library, which, yeah, to be fair, if you're going into what appears to be a longer game here, and now their board's actually fairly awkward, they probably want to deal with this uh, Queen of what's it called? Sorry, Scrooge McDuck. Singing Friends there though is kind of interesting. I guess they want the resources, but we do have the big mana in hand as well. So I think you want to get to a point where you can just slam down the mana. And again, I'm sorry for anyone who sees me jumping through these videos, but when they do these online events, they do take their time, and I understand why. It's all for the theatrics of it and the performance, but yeah, I tend to play a bit quicker than that. Um, so that means the Queen of Heart now. She was on turn 2 on the board and did quite a lot of work here. Um, and you get into a very interesting spot here where you kind of just want to start taking the law, but also you know that Maui's just going to start cleaning up quite a bit. That's a very interesting turn. But then, yeah, I did say to LD about that because I said I haven't played the matchup in set 7 too much, but honestly, if you just get manas down, it's very awkward for them. And at this point, you've counted one Maui and I think 2 crabs, maybe 1 crab. So you know it's going to be even more awkward for them to start answering things. And then you've got the law on the board, so you just have a mana up and then you just start slamming down stuff on the board every turn as well. And then Hiram, yeah, can be this great resource machine, just to keep you going for longer as well. Um, so yeah, I just find this tends to be quite a favoured matchup as well. So they want to deal with everything on the board here. They don't have Sisu and answers like that, and they also want to get rid of this mana, and they don't have Cusco or Hideaway. So it's just this really awkward board state where they're still at zero lore as well, because they pretty much can't start gaining their own lore until they lock you out of the game. Um, so yeah, but that mana alone has done just enough work, I think. And then you can just shove all these characters on the board. They'll probably go for run it into the mana and then B prep, which is a fairly awkward turn again. But one more B prep would be a really good spot as well. So yeah, I think generally forcing them to be prepared their entire board as well. They will draw two cards next turn. They've got three be prepared. So if you had another mana off the top, I think you're just in an amazing spot here. They pretty much have to be prepared. There's no way they don't. Um, which is just yeah, where you could always get them into the spot. And I don't know, I think mana's becoming a little bit relevant of a card because Ruby Sapphire is going to go on loads of location hate, and I think Sapphire Steel will as well. But you still have matchups like this where mana is basically a 9 health character that's always exerted and always quests for 2 every turn. So yeah, I still think it has some relevancy in the deck. Maybe just go down to a 3 count copy of it. I'm on a 4 count right now. But I believe a lot of Ruby Sapphire is gearing up for their mirrors, and they're putting Cuscos and hideaways for the opponent Sapphire coils. So we also get like kind of the splashback on that as well, which is horrible. But yeah, of course, you definitely see them just go for the. But that was the first bits of 3 lore they got in this entire game. And that gets to a fairly awkward hand here, where actually, yeah, you can kind of just get a Chi and Po down here, and you only really need to find 5 lore. And do they want to be prepared just one Chi and Po? Probably not. Getting these Mickeys feels rough. That's why I've kind of been enjoying the Mulan. I don't think Mickey's bad at all. I think he's pretty good because he's going to stick and not get let the Storm Raged on. But if you're against a Bell that's going to sing Let the Storm Rage on, they'll just run into it and remove him anyway. So he's not that amazing for that. He's another Sisu target. What I liked about Mulan is if you're in the spot like this where you drew two, you can draw it and it will draw you another card. And as long as you have something else to discard, you could sort of start cleaning your hand up. And like, say if you played one and drew a mana, you'd just be in a really good spot, I think. So you just get to cycle through the deck more. With 8 Porpsicles and 8 songs, like we're very likely to brick a bit more, I think, with just having a large amount of stuff like that. That's not character based. Like we were 50 characters in set 6, and now we're down to about 40 characters. So the percentage to brick has gone up by a significant bit. So I think Mulan helps you clean up those things as well. I say that like the Porpsicle is a massive brick, you tend to just play it and draw. But when you're only operating with about 5 ink, you play it, you draw, and then you can't really afford to do much else there. But yeah, that's just the spot, isn't it, that Kiwi wants to be, and I'll go back on that again, where you just play mana, and you have a quester on board like Alice or something like that, or it used to be Gantu, and it's like, which one do you want to get rid of because they're both going to get you 2 lore? And that's kind of the relentlessness of the deck is just constantly throwing stuff at you. And I'm not sure really what they can draw here. I think it's a crab, but then they can't get rid of the Alice as well as they can get rid of um, uh, the mana. So yeah, just an amazing spot. And why I always thought Ruby's Amethyst was quite the good matchup for us, as long as you can get past that initial crab density moments. And I think if Ruby Amethyst was popular again, you could add in cards like Gantu. Gantu was a nightmare for them because Tremaine was really the only efficient answer to it, but you'd never really play Gantu in a spot where it could get Tremaine, or you'd aim to not do that. So yeah, I think definitely Gantu would be amazing in this, but how popular is Ruby Amethyst going to be? And it looks like the first game where he doesn't have Bell turn one, which is not the worst, and it kind of feels like maybe the Sticky Mickey can show why it's important, but no, going for the port into a belt. No, not into a belt turn one. But I thought maybe the Sticky Mickey that turn would have been decent for the Chernobog. You just mean they can't keep questing with it and force them to pop it. Um, that's kind of a fairly rough spot to be in right at the start, so it'll be interesting to see how he navigates this. They're looking at that hand again, like turn 3 doesn't really look like he has anything to play that's that great, and then they're drawing into another item. And yeah, that's why again I'm gonna oversell Mulan here. You could have used her earlier on to start cycling through and getting rid of some of these more useless cards, and like I don't really know when this Mickey actually hits the board and does anything relevant. And because Mulan has an on play, you kind of get some value out of playing that one cost already, and then whatever she does from there that point out is pretty good. And you could use the Simba as well, that does the same thing, but it's a 1/2. So yeah, they've set up a fairly awkward board. Kind of I think if you'd have got the Sticky Mickey down turn one as well, maybe they wouldn't be able to do the Chernobog into what's it called? Library quest, draw 2 cards, and you would have slowed them down a little bit. It looks like they've just gone for the take out the Chernobog, because definitely, yeah, if they draw 2 cards from that, that's kind of a really rough spot to be in. Um, Very interesting match, and that Queen of Heart actually realizing how much work that can put in, and like a lot of decks just struggling versus X4s, and it looks like, of course, our deck struggles a lot as well. It's very hard to sing strength and get 4 characters down at that early point. She doesn't seem that menacing until you pair of a crab, does she? So, very interesting and cool card there. Um, and to keep going forward, and yeah, I think Scrooge has been a very good addition to the deck as well. Like I've put him back in as a 3 count, and he's just an insane body really to put on the board. Like you play him down, and he's gonna be able to. Yeah, okay, they're just doing stuff like this. He's just moving it all in the library, but he's actually got a fairly weak hand. Um, Yeah, he's just a really good body on the board to start trading up with Maui's and stuff like that. And as much as Sapphire Coil is like really overwhelming to play against, like a fairly awful card to play against, he does mean he minuses only down to 3, which means that he's not little Sisu or big Sisu range still. So he just means he can get hit by a Maui. So it still kind of sucks in a little way, but he's just been awesome. And then you can get him down with a Cogsworth, and you can start trading up really well into the board. So I quite like that card. I think he's got it as a 2 count there. But yeah, I think 2 count is fine. I probably 3 is overselling the card, to be honest with you. Just later on in the game, it's nice to drop a 5/5 down as a top deck rather than a bit of a weaker card. So that library's actually fairly got a lot of work in. I don't know how much lore it is, because it looks like sometimes they get a bit bored and don't update the lore counter, which makes sense. But it looks like you might want to just get this Merlin Crab off the board at some point, because it's just going to start being a real big pain for him. But he's in a fairly decent spot actually. He's got a better draw engine set up than the opponent does, and this now means the opponent has to play Brawl on the next turn, which again is not the worst in the world. Um, don't love that. I guess you keep inking and start drawing cards out, I think. But yeah, I think definitely you want to get that strength out on the crab. Otherwise, they're just going to have a bit of a joyous time chasing after you and removing everything. And actually, it's always awkward when you play RP on the draw as well. It does feel like you're a bit behind. You don't get the lore count first. They actually can be quite an aggressive deck, and especially with this new build where they can sort of start racing you and just play all that aggression out. So yeah, I wonder what point they're into. They do have one of my most favorite plays, maybe possibly to do, is play double Alice on one turn and just set up this really awkward board where you're going to be questing for a lot and giving war to a bunch of stuff, which I quite like. It looks like they passed the turn back over to them and not having done much on the account, which is fairly interesting to have not used this Scrooge to do much here. It's really interesting to see where it ends up. That Pete's pretty good, but they don't know they don't have any Be Prepared in their hand. But yeah, 2 Scrooges out. Look at that. And then you've got all these Mickeys for Tremaine cover as well. So those 1 drops as being Tremaine cover is always very, very nice. Um, Building up this board to do something with, and I'm quite interested to see what they do with it actually. And this is the most passive I've ever seen someone play Kiwi. But yeah, that Pete's very nice for that turn, giving yourself another turn. So they take out the library with the Scrooge. Of course, on the snapback, it's very awkward for them to do anything. Uh, oh, yep, that's a pretty nice turn. So they play the double Scrooge into the library, and then they strength the crab. So now things are very awkward to remove. You got that item set up. I think that item's actually quite big to have set up. If you draw into a Hiram, you get another engine drawn. And I guess versus RP as well, it's like they have an answer, but they don't answer as well as Red Blue does. Whereas all the other steel decks that don't have any red removal, they fairly struggle to answer a high efficiently. RP does, but not the best. Going to rush 2 in to get the card draw. It's not bad. I don't know. I guess because the library on the draw is really. Oh my god, he's camera. Bless him. I think RP on the draw can be rough when they get that library set up, and we're looking like we're having lists of 4 libraries again. And it's always interesting to see if you just race them or not because they're going to have such a resource engine. Um, but I'm like really liking how LD's playing Kiwi here, and he's playing a bit more of a resource game and really going into those later turns versus a deck that can basically play a card that draws a card every turn, or like almost majority of their cards just draw them an extra card. Um, so yeah, it's just quite an interesting game, and hopefully they can get their camera set up again. Um, yeah, so they are probably in a spot where they can take out this next mana as well, which is fairly this next library, which is fairly interesting, and drawing another Pete as well, being able to wow really get into the point where they'll just be able to out resource them and maybe there is possibility that you can just go a bit more into that. I think maybe into these Ruby decks, that would be a struggle to do. But into these Sapphire decks, sorry, to go into this more resource game like we've seen with Artifacts' list. But it's really interesting. I did assume and did when I played the minor games that I played against RP lists, because of the high room, you end up with a lot more cards in hand than you used to. You're not in top deck mode straight away. You get to draw quite a few cards and then you get to throw them out later on. And again, like I say, Ruby Amethyst can answer Hiram with a 3 cost action, but they're only playing with like 6 or 7 ink turns, and that can chomp up their entire turn. If you play it on 5, and their turn 5 is Brawl, they're answer your draw engine, but they've just not done much with it that turn. And playing that other Pete down on this turn, they've got a lot of possibility to just gain a bunch of lore quickly. I'm wondering if he's just playing out until he gets his manas down, which would be really awesome. I mean, yeah, if you take out that Maui here, play a mana down and start questing out. I don't know how many Mauis and stuff they've gone through, but it seems like they've done a fair good amount of it. And I've seen a lot of crabs be removed as well. I don't think they're in a horrible spot. I think they're in a very, very demanding spot. And to be able to really resource drain RP as much as they have, I'm just very, very impressed. And then given the Mickey Ward, I just love it. I love it because, yep, just playing around a crab, all those minor details as well that I'll admit in practice I definitely forget about. If you top deck another mana here, I don't really know how they get into this. Again, into an Anna Braving the Storm, but I think they're actually out of cards. So what's on the board is what they see. Um, I think you've seen a couple Be Prepared maybe. So yeah, you can quest up to 11, and I think you would just slam it all on the board. But that's just me as a player. Um, just because I think you present lethal the next turn if you do. Yeah, they're going to crab and hit that, which is kind of rough. But then you would go to 13, 16, 17, 18, 19. No, you'd be 1 off lethal if you do that. So maybe there is some merit to keeping the Alice in hand. And chomping away at this mana. Yeah, you just play down another mana and protect the mana sort of game. Or you just full quest and say it's exactly the same sort of board state he was in the sort of last game, but this time he's got 2 manas, which I just love to see. Where it's like deal with these characters on the board or deal with these 2 manas, or either way I'm just going to gain a bunch of lore. And I think because you have to deal with these manas before you take out this Anna, there isn't really a way for them to get back in the game. Um, so yeah, they could do 5 to one of the manas to bring up to 7, and Be Prepared the board. But even still, after that, you've got a whole other mana to be dealing with. So yeah, just like the sort of, I think this is a really good masterclass in this last game of like how much you can go into the later game versus RP, and resource drain them out. So that was just a really good game. I think mana is very, very good in this matchup. I guess if RP is still going to be played and popular, definitely put manas in the list and keep them around. But yeah, I think there's loads in there to watch, and probably the commentary from Lorcana Villain, your Breezy, is going to be a lot better than mine was. I'm just trying to talk about the deck, so definitely go and check them out. And the LCC games are very good. He played another round as well versus Moyen that I definitely say just go check out. I can't remember the outcome of that one, but yeah, that was really good. A lot to learn from that. So if you sort of want a bit of a guide on or some like live gameplay of the deck, please do go watch that game back. So yeah, thank you.